all we have available in what are the MDMs available in the market, and what are the capabilities, high level capabilities of MDM Infosphere MDM, and what are the modules that we have. So that was what we had discussed, and also the implementation styles of the MDM, the collaborative, registry style, centralized physical style. So we went through all these. So we will be discussing a little bit more about the virtual and the physical modules. Then we will move on to the architecture. So this is just the enterprise view of Infosphere MDM. Um, we can these are the third-party applications and everything that have been integrated. So this is our core physical sorry, MDM, either it's physical, hybrid, or virtual. This is the overview of what we had discussed yesterday. The MDM technical capabilities, virtual MDM, physical MDM, and the hybrid combines. So this is basically the virtual model, high-level virtual model. So what all it contains is you have a master data engine. That is the heart of the virtual MDM, the master data engine, where all the matching, the reduplication, all the process happens. That sits there in the MDM engine, the master data engine. Then we have a data stewardship UI, wherein you can deduplicate the system can do up to an extent, the matching or anything system can do up to an extent, but beyond that you need some manual intervention. So that kind of stuff we can manage through the data stewardship UI, which has all the features that are helpful for us to either view the MDM records, search for the MDM records. Then you can deduplicate, or you can merge the records. You can do all the operations using the data stewardship UI. Okay. Then the data model. So that is the core of the MDM, where you store the data. So it comes with its own data model. So we can have we can do modifications on top of on top of the data model that has been given to us. It is flexible, so we can add our own tables, but the core of the data model is fixed. Okay, so the functionality and everything just takes care. So then we have the integrations. You can use Java, .NET. Then there are the various components which are on top of the engine. In physical module, a bit similar, but it has some more additional features. So again, it has the MDM engine. So virtual is called MDS, Master Data Service, and physical is usually referred as MDM. Prior to 11.4, that is how the reference was. MDS is a virtual module, and MDM is the physical module. So that was since it doesn't process the master record, virtual it is called as master data service. And here physical, it stores the master record. It is a repository. So it was called the master data management, MDM. Okay, but now since it is merged, so we call it as Infosphere MDM, which are both virtual physical in the hybrid version. The Infosphere MDM physical module. Then again you have the stewardship UI. Other than that, you have governance UI, and you have another BPM, business process module, that can be integrated to the physical module, which has its own features. So then it has business services. So these are one of the core of physical MDM, wherein we do all the customizations, our custom transactions, how we want it to, how we want the transactions to go through, how we get the request, and how we have to service. So all these customizable services we use here. Apart from that, you have some inbuilt services which we call as OOTB, out of the box transactions, which are provided by the MDM module. So again, it has its own MDM engine. So the MDM engine has these things: matching, which we call as suspect duplicate processing (SDP), wherein it'll identify the suspects, and then it'll merge the suspects, matching and everything is done over there. In the workbench, so that is the tool that is which we have. I say it's an Eclipse kind of a plugin. It is very similar to Eclipse, the rational application developer. So that there all the customizations we do, and workbench is the one which does all the, it will take care of all the transactions at the internal level. Then it has frameworks like request response framework and other batch frameworks. So that part that becomes the core of MDM engine. Then data models, yes, we have since physical supports many domains, we have the data models which has both party, account, product, and we also can create a custom data model. So now we'll just quickly move on to MDM architecture. Am I clear to everyone? Silence, I take it as yes.
Yeah.
So David and Pratik, even at any point of time you have any doubts, right? You can just quickly stop me over there. Do not wait till the end and then ask me the question. So whenever you have any doubts, you can stop me as and when, and then we can clear your doubts and then go ahead. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
So now the MDM architecture. So this is the core of the MDM architecture, that the complete MDM architecture that we have. Okay, so it has different things. So it has been classified into these high-level things, like MDM consumers. So MDM consumers are the ones who consume consume the application. So it can be the client applications that have been that will be integrated with the MDM, or the out of the box which have been provided by the MDM tool, that is the inspector UI, the admin UI, data stewardship UI, and the product UI. So these four are provided by the MDM tool. So inspector or data stewardship UI, you can, the naming is almost the same, but inspector is used for the virtual model. So in hybrid we have both physical and virtual, right? So inspector is dedicated to virtual, and data stewardship UI is dedicated to physical. But prior to hybrid, if it was virtual, we would say either inspector or a data stewardship UI. Both are, the naming is same. Okay. So inspector is dedicated to virtual, and data stewardship is dedicated to physical. Just keep this in mind. Okay, so these are the out-of-box UIs provided. Then we have the admin UI, so you can perform all the admin actions using this UI. And then we have a separate UI for product, wherein you're adding a product, removing a product. So the product UI completely differs from the data stewardship UI that is used to manage the products if you have. Okay. So apart from that, you have the third-party applications that you can integrate, either client apps or the BPM Express. I told you, right? BPM. So that can be integrated with the MDM. Okay. And one more thing, guys, if you feel I'm going pretty, if you're not comfortable with my pace, just let me know. If you want me to go a bit slow or go a bit quicker, just let me know. Then the request response framework. So this is the framework. This is part of our MDM MDM itself. So this request response framework handles the request. By the name itself, it is should be request response framework. Okay, it handles the requests that we get from the external systems and processes the request and sends to the core MDM module and takes back the response from the MDM module and constructs the response and it gives it back to the MDM.
Santosh, can you please zoom a little?
Okay.
Thank you.
So mostly we internally it uses all the XML. So MDM takes in the XML requests. So 90% of the time we handle the XML request itself. Okay. So if an external system sends a request in a different format, then ultimately we have to use an ETL framework or anything to convert it to an XML request and then send it to the MDM. Then then we have the physical module where we have the control components, the business logic components. Okay. I'll explain you about these in a bit more detail once we go to the individual components. Then we have a virtual module, again the master data engine, then separate virtual configuration, then the extension frameworks. Then these are all these are additional common features. Over here, so as you see, right, request response framework. So it is the entry point for the core MDM service. Okay, it will pass the service request. Okay, this is the physical one. I think I will go over the first one because pictures are pretty clear on the first one. I'll continue with this one. So the physical module, right? So this physical module contains the core of the physical, where all the processing control components, all the processing is done. Okay, for the physical requests, whatever physical MDM. Okay, in this we have the business logic components wherein we write our own business. So sorry, this is the out-of-box business logic provided. For this only we have for the same physical module we have extension framework, something called the extension framework. So this extension framework helps us to write our custom logic on top of the MDM functionality that has been provided. Okay, so you can write Java classes, you can write different rules. So sometimes whenever in our services, right, whatever is being executed at the core. Okay, whenever we get a particular request, we want to perform some kind of an operations pre and post, like post that request hits the physical module. We want to either add some values, check some values, and add certain values, or you want to do certain checks, validations, and then or you want to after the transaction has hit the core module, you want to tweak the response. So all this can be done using the extension framework, and you have data extensions also, where you create new tables, or you can customize your own the tables that are provided. So I'll explain more about data extensions and behavior extensions later on in the later sessions. Okay, the virtual module is pretty simple. It has one master data engine, and it does the matching and linking takes place. Okay, so always we have the history data. So master data, I mean MDM has the capability of storing the historical data in the history tables, so that we never lose our history, which we wherein if you want to backtrack who has modified a particular value, you can always check in the history tables and get to know. Okay, as the physical, even the virtual model, just before the engine, you have pre-post interactions. These are called handle controls. So pre-handler or post-handler. This works the similar way. If you want just before the request, just before the request hits the master engine, if you want to do any modifications, you can write in the pre-handler, and just after the request, before it is just after the request is completed at the master data engine, and it is sending back, then you can write a post handler to tweak it is just custom. So the handlers and the extension frameworks are custom. So if you want, you can have that feature additional whatever functionality according to your client requirements. Otherwise, if you don't have anything, then this can be ignored. Okay. So virtual configuration contains the algorithm. So this algorithm is completely configurable. You can write your own algorithm. So this algorithm is the core for virtual to do the matching and linking. The all all the elements, everything, logic, everything is defined in the algorithm itself about what has to be done between two records, which records have to be matched, what is to be what should be, and everything. Everything you write custom into the algorithm. Okay. So algorithm. Then you have weights. That is the scores that we assign. So I'll let you know about it. Then we have the MDM Workbench. So MDM Workbench here and here. The Workbench is the tool. Is the Eclipse tool that we use to do all the customizations wherein we write our own custom code. So other than that, we have some other physical common components, and these are physical common components. These are like external rules. So if you want to write any external rules, external validations, then we generally have login right now. So log4j logging, or here we have a custom IDWL logging. So those things are everything is additional common components that are available. And these are the common components which are common to both physical and virtual. Common components like search. So search is an internal functionality. Whenever any request comes in, first thing, if it is an add request or an update request, first thing it does is search to see if it has a matching record. Then only it will proceed to either create a new record or merge it to the existing record. Search functionality is one of the core components of the MDM. Then the matching, and additionally we have the application toolkit, which is useful for us to do all the customizations. Then virtual component, you have the events and the message broker. So event notifications, if a certain event happens, that like if I create a customer, like if I create add a patient, then you want an event notification to your downstream system that I have a new customer. Kindly make a note of it. So that those kind of event handling can be done. So message broker is the one through which we send out the messages. Okay. So the high level.
Santosh, I have a question.
Yeah.
So this from the architecture we can see that there are the components, physical components and the virtual components, that they are disparate things. And how does hybrid component come into picture here? How does the physical and the virtual interact in hybrid models?
So whenever we are defining, whenever when we set up the MDM, so we have an option to select whether it should be a hybrid combination or a physical or or a physical combination or a virtual combination. So internally, it will take care of the interaction between the physical module and the virtual module. That is supported by the tool itself.
Okay.
Yeah. But just that when we are setting up, so once after the setup is done, also we can change. But usually at the beginning of the setup is where we decide whether we are going for a hybrid module or a physical model or a virtual model. If you select the hybrid model, then it'll integrate by itself. It'll integrate. The tool will take care.
Okay.
So as I said, the consumer, Indian consumer. I covered everything at the top. So yeah, so here in the request framework, we even authorize some of the authorize the requests. So all the requests that have to be that reach the MDM has to be either has to be authorized and authenticated. So that we do. So as part of physical, we have the party services, product, account. It's a multi-domain, right? So we have product, account, and party. So party is usually the customer, patient, whatever we. It's like the person. We refer to that as party. So whether it can be person or an organization. Party has two types: person or organization. Uh, so virtual core. So virtual core has audit tables. These audit tables are useful for auditing purpose, wherein any any changes, any modifications, if you want to backtrack who has done at what point of time it's been done. So that can be traced back using the audit tables. Tasks, see whenever, as I said, right, matching is done to an extent. Okay, so we have a particular matching score. We decide a range of matching score, wherein everything below the matching score will not be matched. Two records will not be matched. Everything above the matching score, those two records will be matched. In between, we decide how we decide and everything. I just let you know at the later point of time. So in between, whichever records that lie in between, wherein the system is not able to decide, you based on the score, system is not able to decide whether they are a good match or not. So then it will create a task saying that might be these are these are a potential for linking. Then those are created as tasks wherein our data stewardships or data experts they get into the inspector UI and check for the tasks, and then they resolve. There the manual intervention comes into picture, and this happens in the at the virtual module and even the physical module also. Okay, extension framework. Data model algorithm handles even. And this scrolling so that if I haven't missed anything. Yeah, so this I missed. So these are just third-party products integrations that if we want to do. So this iLog, Dun& Bradstreet, the few of you know that is the central database which gives us the information, but that is chargeable. So that depends on the clients whether they go for that Dun& Bradstreet integration. So other integration information server is the WQS. So WQS is the I would say quality stage standardization. Okay, whenever a particular request that we get from an external system, from an external system, we don't know whether it has the proper inputs. Like if I need, if it sends a person information, whether the person information is complete or not, we don't know. See, the end users, they don't know the significance of providing a proper data. Okay, so and also the standardization that we follow is that only in the last name itself they can write everything. See in the last name or the first name, whichever is mandatory, they write all the details. Like, so if a person's name is this and they make an entry only into the first name column, but again this has to be standardized. So this third party WQF standardizer, it'll help us to standardize the names based on, it has its own logic to standardize the names. Similar way, the addresses, if someone just gives street or one entry, then another entry is like this, street M. So the standardizer takes care of standardizing these two values to same. So it will standardize everything to street node. I'm just giving an example so that this is how it will standardize the address that we give. So internally, it will create a standard format for all the addresses and the names, so that doesn't affect our matching score, and the entries are a bit more standardized into the MDM. So that is with the architecture of the MDM. So then we'll move to the MDM core, wherein how we handle a particular request, how the MDM handles a particular service request that we get from an external system. Okay, so it's called the 100-foot view. Whenever we go about MDM architecture, this is one of the things that everyone is eager to know about, that 100-foot view. It's nothing, just at a high level how the request is being handled. So from a client application, once we get the request response framework decides about the request. It does all the prerequisites, the authorization, authentication. Then it directs it to the MDM code operational server. So if there are any events, the operational server will trigger the event manager, and then the entries are made into the MDM database. Back from the MDM database, it goes back to the operational server request response framework, and it constructs the response and sends back to the client application. Yeah. So same thing. So the 100-foot view. Now you get to the 10-foot view. So once, so getting into a bit more details about how the request response or how the request is handled. Okay, so the request response framework has these components: DWL service controller, DWL request handler, DWL transaction BP. Okay, the DWL service controller, it is the entry point for the Infosphere MDM. So wherein whenever we get a request, the DWL service controller is the first point of contact for that particular request for an external system. Okay, again it's a statelet session bean, so that whenever we want to roll back any transactions, it will be easier for us. Then the DWL request handler. So the request handler, it will pass the request. So this particular request handler will pass the request, and then it passes to the DWL transaction BP. Okay, it will create a transaction object internally, and it will send to the DWL transaction BP. The request handler will just pass the request and send it to DWL transaction business proxy. BP is called the business proxy. Okay. Then this DWL transaction BP, it will invoke the appropriate controller. Okay, it will create invoke appropriate controller. So if you see over here, right, POBJ, BOBJ is nothing but a business object. It is the okay. It is the components that a person particular request we get, that the whole request is converted into a business object, a Java object that will be sent to transaction controller or finder controller. So what are these two? So transaction controller, so whichever transaction like add, update, delete, we call them as persistent transactions. That means they do modifications. Sorry, they do modifications on the database, on the MDM. So that's why we call them as persistent transactions. So all the persistent transactions take the route of transaction controller, and finder controller, uh, the search requests, get requests, all these are handled by the finder controller. Uh, am I clear on this? Because this is a bit important. Transaction controller and the finder controller. So all the persistent transactions go through the transaction controller. Finder controller is used for search transactions, get transactions, wherein you just retrieve the data. You are not persisting any data on the database. You are just retrieving the data from the database. Okay. Then we have the business component where okay, transaction. Yeah. One difference between transaction controller and the finder controller is that transaction controller is a stateless session B. That is because it's a persistent transaction, right? At any point of time, if a particular transaction fails, then we have to roll back that particular transaction. So that's why transaction controller is a stateless session wheel, wherein will keep the state of that. It will help us to do a rollback of a particular transaction if it fails at any point, at any later point. Final controller is just a Java object. Okay. Business components again are a Java objects. Okay, so this business components very very have a wide variety. So if you get a person object, right, a person object is called a business object. Internally, it will have primitive elements like a date of birth, gender. These are all primitive, but again it will have some some more objects like the name object. Name is a complex entry, like it can contain first name, middle name, last name, suffix, prefix. So it can contain many. So that is another business object. Then address is another business object. So this address business object can contain some primitive elements like the first line, address line 1, address line 2, address line 3, zip code. And name can contain um, primitive elements like first name, last name, second. So person or organization. Okay, this is a business object. Okay. Under this, we have primitive elements like date of birth, gender, etc. Then we have inside this we have additional objects like or name, person or name, POVs. So again, these will contain primitive elements like first name. Whoever is coding right, this difference has to be you have to keep in mind this, because for a developer this is pretty core. So these are the primitive elements, and these are internal. these are business objects which are part of the parent person object. So again, in these you can have some more business objects. It's not restricted to one level or two levels, but yeah. And then the BOBJ business object query. So ultimately at the end, the database it reads the query. So this this BOBJ query converts every transaction into a um, particular query and executes on the database. So this is taken care internally. So we have no involvement over there. So if you see here, right, this is showing the add person sequence. So DWL service controller. Okay. So on DWL service controller, you get an XML. It is read by the DWL request handler. From there, it reaches into the DWL transaction BP. Then it will create this XML has been converted to a transaction object at the DWL request handler. From there, the DWL transaction BP has converted it to an add person object. Okay, so we are just adding a person. So it will create an add person BOBJ. So core party transaction, this particular transaction. So whenever I said it, whenever you have a create, it will do a search also. So here one create will happen. So after the search, then a create will happen. So whenever any record that is being inserted into MDM, first transaction that happens is the search. This is the sequence for get person. So get person, you just have a get person, you don't have create. So here again the person BOBJ query, the core party finder. So this get person execute the DWL transaction BP. It can see, if you see here, this is core party finder over here. Okay, if you see if it the add person, right, it was core party transaction. So it's core party transaction. So that is the major difference. Which particular based on the request, what component has to be called, that will be decided by the DWL transaction. So in virtual is not that complex. Virtual is pretty simple. So the DWS service controller is the interaction point for the external system. So DWS service controller will pass the request to the DWS request handler. It will convert it into a transaction object and send it to the virtual proxy. So whatever kind of request it is, whether it's an persistent request, add, update, delete, or a search request, it has to go through the virtual proxy. And virtual proxy directly sends it to master data engine. So you don't have separate components over here. Master data engine just does the business logic, and it updates the database accordingly. So that was with the so that was the architecture and the complete architecture, high-level architecture, and the request response framework. So that will be it for today. So tomorrow we will be discussing the physical data model and the virtual data model. So any doubts